one of the infamous KGB's detention centers. Life in the Soviet Union until the 1980s would be the closest you can get to Orwell's 1984 realm. But let's talk about that later. I'm in Tallinn, Estonia. It's a cheap 2-hour ferry ride from Helsinki across the grey and uninviting Gulf of Finland. The city looks a bit cyberpunkish from the sea. Back in the day, this was not so great place to live. Nowadays, Estonia feels Nordic in many ways. Tech-savvy, safe, clean streets, least corrupt and most prosperous of all the former Eastern Bloc countries. But the Estonians have proved themselves not only through what they have accomplished, but through what they have endured. Everybody knows back in the day this country was part of the Soviet Union. Of course, there are still lots of Soviet-era remnants here and there, buildings falling apart, Brezhnev-era blocks of flats. All in all, brutalist Soviet architecture. For example, the now defunct Lenin Sports and Cultural Center, built for the 1980 Moscow Olympics. The sailing program took place here. You got Kaubamaya, that's the Soviet department store from the 60s. Didn't have much consumer goods worth of buying. Street kiosks were empty, pretty much only a decoration. There was this shortage of all kinds of consumer goods in the land of the Soviets. Maybe something interesting over there. That's a Soviet-era luxury skyscraper hotel built in 1972. Top floor housed a secret KGB listening post. It now functions as a museum. They were monitoring calls in and out of Estonia to the west. I remember this older guy reminiscing. He was a Finn. He made a phone call to Finland, talking in Finnish. The guy was engaged in his phone conversation. All of a sudden he heard this clicking and a command. Speak in Russian or Estonian. Of course, if you were an USSR citizen and the KGB was seriously unhappy with the content of your phone conversation to the west, they could have taken you to this address. This building used to house the KGB headquarters. The bricked up basement windows muting the sounds of sometimes brutal interrogations in the basement. Nowadays there's a small museum, the KGB prison cells. A room with an interviewing chair. A very sad place. In the movies, there's always this Americans versus KGB spy game going on. It wasn't like that in real life. The KGB's main function was domestic surveillance and suppressing and persecuting opposition to the Soviet regime. The majority of people were, of course, passive conformists. They never had to see any of this indifference and adaptability of the majority kept Soviet regime nicely afloat. Next to the KGB headquarters, this St. Olaf's Church. They used the spire as the TV signal jamming station. You see, Estonians were able to pick up TV signals from Finland and thus watch Western TV. Estonians were not supposed to be watching that. The jamming, it didn't work. At some point, there was this more creative plan to block the signals coming from Finland, to build some kind of metal divider in the Gulf to block the signals coming from Finland. The whole project was later abandoned when it turned out that this made absolutely no sense. When this church was built in the 12th century, it was the tallest building in the world. I don't know, maybe it's still the highest point in Tallinn. You can climb up the tower. The spiral stone staircase has 232 steep steps. It leads you to the viewing platform. If I can make it. Whoa! I don't have an intense fear of heights, but you can't rationalize falling down from these heights. Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens. That's the city of Babylon and the Tower of Babel for you folks. If you don't believe in God, you came to the right city. They say Estonia is the least religious country in the world. Not religious, despite there are some similarities. You know, God delivered the Israelites out of Egypt, and the Estonians got rid of the Russian rule. Both nations got out, not to become nothing, but to become something. That's the Raja Apteek, the oldest pharmacy in Europe that has continuously been in business in the same building since the early 1400s. You got this small pharmaceutical museum inside. It's easy to see how in the early days the cures were just a mixture of superstition, frogs, dried up rodents and herbal remedies. When you smoke the herb, it reveals you to yourself, man. Maybe something interesting under those old city walls and fortifications and towers. There are underground passages, a kind of a time travel exhibition from the 17th century to almost present day. Some Cold War stuff. The place was equipped with independent electricity, ventilation, phone connections, etc. A shelter for the communist elite in case of an American nuclear strike. Toilet facilities. KGP Multipass, Madam. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the times were tough. People ended up in the streets, so for over a decade, these tunnels were populated by homeless people. Governor, I know it's hard to be a beggar in a city where everybody's poor.
Okay, so
We got a motorcade coming. I think they're not gonna repeat the JFK failure here in Estonia. No open-top vehicles. Speed is of the essence. That was obviously somebody very important. Let's get a bite to eat in the restaurants. Don't expect BS, chit-chat with a smile in customer service. You're not here to stroke your ego and be pampered by a modern-day slave. You just describe what you need and they offer a solution.
Tere! Mä soovin pankooki Nordic ja pudelivesi.
Estonian and Finnish languages are kind of similar. Estonian is more dynamic, Finnish more archaic. This Estonian language and national identity are deeply intertwined. If you learn their language, you are one of them. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.